Distinguished guests, dear friends, welcome to 2021 online launching ceremony of Paulson Prize for Sustainability, co-hosted by the Paulson Institute and Tsinghua University. Restarting economy is a top priority for all countries in the world. We're also facing the crisis of climate change and declining biodiversity. The Paulson Prize for Sustainability is awarded annually to a project in China that provides an innovative, scalable, market-based solution at the intersection of economics and the environment. This award was launched by the Paulson Institute in 2013 and has been developed in partnership with Tsinghua University since 2017. It is fair to say that today's launching ceremony has great relevance. Today's launching ceremony is also very informative. We have members of the jury committee to introduce each category of the prize. We also have set up a high-level dialogue, inviting experts in green investment, ecology, biodiversity conservation, carbon market, AI from home and abroad, to discuss international innovation trends and new opportunities for China's green development. Now, let's pass the floor to Ms. Deborah Lehr, Vice Chairman and Executive Director of Paulson Institute.
Hello, I'm Deborah Lehr, Executive Director of the Paulson Institute, and I'm delighted to be joining you today along with our partners at Tsinghua University to launch the 8th annual Paulson Institute Prize. We're so excited that we continue to get such excellent applications for some of the very innovative and interesting work that is being done around green finance and conservation in China. This year, more than ever, it's important that countries learn from the innovation that is happening here in China as they look at rebuilding their economies in this post-COVID atmosphere in a green manner. All over the world, countries are looking at the experiments that are happening in China around green finance, fintech and sustainability, conservation of wetlands and national parks, and even pricing of natural resources to see if there are lessons that can be learned. We're very proud of the fact that many of our previous prize winners have been used as examples in other countries. We hope that we will receive many new interesting applications this year, and that you will seriously consider giving thought to being part of our Paulson Institute Prize. Thank you to Vice President Yanqing for joining us also from Tsinghua University, who will be providing the closing. And we really appreciate your ongoing support. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Deborah. As Deborah mentioned, the Paulson Prize is now a prestigious annual award in global sustainable development, and this could not be achieved without the support of our partner Tsinghua University. Let's invite Mr. Yanqing, Vice President of Tsinghua University. Distinguished Ms. Deborah Lehr, distinguished jury committee members, Dear guests, hello. It's a great pleasure to witness the online launching ceremony of 2021 Paulson Prize for Sustainability. This is the 5th year that Tsinghua University and the Paulson Institute have partnered to host this prize. Over the past 4 years, we are pleased to see that the Paulson Prize has become a widely influential award, attracting more and more local governments, corporate entities, social organizations to actively engage in green development, making contribution to the promotion of sustainability in China and the whole world. 2021 is the beginning for China to upgrade from building a moderately prosperous society to high-quality development. In China's vision for 2035, green production and lifestyle, steady reduction in carbon emissions after peaking, and fundamental improvement in ecology are listed as important goals. We're now a year into the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's still ravaging the whole world, threatening not only the public health system, but also the world economy and environment, making us realize that green development is of great significance for human society. Today, in front of the pandemic, our cooperation between Tsinghua University and the Paulson Institute against the backdrop of the global pandemic, the Paulson Prize for Sustainability is ever more relevant and important. This year, we look forward to more Chinese local governments, companies, and associations participating in this prize, showcasing China's innovative leadership in sustainable development. I wish 2021 Paulson Prize for Sustainability a great success. Thank you, President Yang from Tsinghua University. This year's Paulson Prize has 2 categories: green innovation, nature stewardship, seeking innovative solutions based on 2 dimensions, urban habitat and natural ecology. Next, let's invite Mr. Zhuang Weimin, co-chair of the jury committee, academician of CAE, president and chief architect of Architectural Design and Research Institute of Tsinghua University, to introduce the green innovation category. Thank you, Deborah, and thank you, Moderator. My name is Zhuang Weimin. I'm from Tsinghua University. I'm also the co-chair of the jury committee for the Paulson Prize for Sustainability. It's a great honor and pleasure for me today to have this opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts. As you know, the annual launch of the Paulson Prize for Sustainability is here with us again. We are looking forward to this year's prize, not only because the Paulson Prize for Sustainability has been with us since 2013, but more importantly, this year we have a very important background of the 2 sessions of MPC and CPPCC in China. The 14th Five-Year Plan was clearly announced by the central government, and this year marks the beginning of the 14th Five-Year Plan. The most important keyword of the 5-year plan is 30-60 carbon peaking, carbon neutrality. That is to say, we need to build our society in a sustainable way in order to achieve this ambitious target. That is to say, carbon peaking in 2030 and carbon neutrality in 2060. In this context, I think the Paulson Prize has greater relevance this year. The Paulson Prize focuses on sustainable development, circular economy, smart cities, and green innovation. And when it comes to the category of green innovation, some of the words like green benefits, scalable projects, financing mechanisms, and social economic benefits are what we want to emphasize on. So this category of the prize is a very representative one. Green innovation category is for comprehensive solutions in the fields of circular economy, environmental pollution prevention and control, energy saving, emission reduction. This award encourages innovative models, application of green and emerging technologies, including but not limited to green financing products and services, 5G, big data, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence. It has a demonstration role. The Paulson Prize for Sustainability is not only focused on innovation, but also on whether such an innovative mechanism can be promoted nationwide or even worldwide. Of course, under the big ambitious goal of carbon peaking, carbon neutrality 3060 proposed in the 14th Five-Year Plan, we have more reasons to inspire more people to participate in this process, so as to achieve a consensus. With such a great platform, we can promote the best practices in green innovation and nature conservation. And these achievements can inspire others, I'm sure of it. Thank you, academician Zhuang Weimin. Now let's invite Mr. Ma Guangren, Vice President and Secretary General of China Wetland Conservation Association and former Chairman of Wetland Conservation Management Center of the State Forestry Administration. Mr. Ma will introduce Nature Stewardship category. Hello, Moderator. Hello, everyone. Today, I will mainly talk about the following aspects. First, our understanding of the 14th Five-Year Plan. The 14th Five-Year Plan pointed out our future direction in addressing climate change, environmental governance, ecology, protection, and marine development. Combined with my work, I will briefly talk about my understanding. During the 14th Five-Year Plan, ecological civilization is on top of our agenda. The promotion of green development and the harmonious coexistence. The plan states that by 2035, a green way of production and green lifestyles will be widely accepted by people. Carbon emissions will reach the peak and then steadily decline. Ecological environment will fundamentally improve, and the goal of building a beautiful China will be basically achieved. Second, in order to meet the urgent challenges of climate change and declining biodiversity, we need to use nature-based solutions and innovative mechanisms. China's experience is an inspiration for other countries. In terms of ecological protection compensation mechanisms, new mechanisms have been proposed to improve market-based and diversified ecological compensation and encourage various types of social capital to participate. In the future, ecological compensation in China will be more diversified, with joint participation from the government, enterprises, social organizations, and the public. Now, a brief introduction to the Nature Stewardship category of the Paulson Prize. 2020 is an important year for biodiversity conservation, with COP15 in China. The Paulson Prize has created the Nature Stewardship category to help build China's ecological civilization by exploring and encouraging innovative solutions. This category seeks best management practices and pilot projects that effectively conserve biodiversity and restore ecosystems, focusing on projects that are forward-looking and innovative in terms of concepts and technical models, as well as management and financing mechanisms. Similar to Green Innovation category, the Nature Stewardship category also has an independent jury committee that invites renowned Chinese and American experts in the field of ecology, environmental protection, to evaluate projects based on criteria in 5 aspects: ecological and environmental impact, social benefits, creativity, financing mechanisms, and scalability. Last year was the first year of this category, and the project covered areas of nature conservation, including conservation of threatened species, ecosystem restoration, nature reserve management, ecotourism, conservation policy research. After evaluation by experts, the Haikou Wetland Conservation and Restoration Project was the winner. As the jury committee member, we have witnessed the success of the nature stewardship category last year, and we hope to see more applications for this year's prize. We welcome all of you to actively participate. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ma Guangren. We want to promote global green recovery with sustainable solutions and innovative technologies. Let China's innovative solutions go to other countries in the whole world. Now let's witness the official launch of the Paulson Prize 2021. The 2021 Paulson Prize for Sustainability is officially open for submission from today till June the 30th. Please follow the Paulson Institute website and WeChat account for more information. We look forward to your application. I will now pass the floor to Ms. Yanqing, Director of Strategic Research Center of Shanghai Artificial Intelligence Laboratory and Director of Yicai Research. She will moderate the next session.
Distinguished guests, audience, I am Yanqing. It's a great pleasure to chair today's high-level dialogue of the launch ceremony of the Paulson Prize. As an old friend of this prize, I'm very happy to join you here. This is a very special year. After COVID, the world is emerging from the pandemic and moving towards the new green recovery. So at this new historic juncture, the prize this year is very timely and significant. As is said before, China is faced with green development opportunity. The world is coming to the consensus. We see that China and the United States are showing greater space for cooperation, which is very encouraging. China announced their 30-60 objectives, and the world is looking to China to make greater efforts. And the 14th five-year plan also emphasizes green development in China's modernization drive. So all the information is encouraging, but everyone recognizes that to reach their final destination, the journey can be hard and tough. So in this process, in my view, there are several key elements that need to be discussed. First, green development. Post-COVID, all the countries believe that green investment is the key to the emergence from pandemic and the move towards recovery. And second, green finance. Green finance can bring lots of impetus and risk factors to the market and can also drive future green investment while changing our investment and business environment. And third, technology. I think the drive of technology can change cost-benefit analysis while changing financial markets and growth models. So I have lots of expectations on technology. On top of that, the most important mechanism is the market mechanism and the incentive mechanism. Without incentive, the market cannot work properly. On top of that, government goal setting as well as government vision are also key, including the awareness of the public and participation of the public. Against this background, we can work to promote global green development, green recovery, and sustainable future. It's an honor to have with us 4 speakers who are key opinion leaders in this area. They are Tracy Wolstencroft. He's Paulson Prize Jury Committee member and former president and CEO of the National Geographic Society and a former partner at Goldman Sachs. And we also have speakers from China and the rest of the world. Madame Rose Neal, Chief Conservation Officer of Paulson Institute, Professor Chia, Professor of School of Public Policy and Management of Tsinghua University, Professor of Institute for Public Policy of Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and Yanqing, Director of the Shenzhen Institute of Building Research. And many of them are my old friends. It's a great pleasure to moderate today's discussion.
And we have mentioned that the Biden administration had made the United States back to the climate accord, his policy priority. And at the same time, China has just declared a 30 and a 60, just a big goal for the coal, for the carbon ceiling, and also the carbon neutrality. At the same time, we have seen that the Biden's administration has unveiled a huge $2 trillion in infrastructure invest plan, in which the green investment and green finance play a big role there. So according to your observation, what is the role of the green investment, green finance, and also the green technology for us to achieve all this very big and also very difficult goals? And what is the function and market function, and also the incentive mechanism can forge all these forces towards a better future for us, please?
Well, good morning and good evening to everyone. And thank you for that question. And thank you to the Paulson Institute for inviting me to be part of this panel. As you mentioned, the Paulson Institute and the collaboration that it fosters between China and the United States is really an extraordinary asset. And so I'm delighted to be a part. Now, I might just make two overall comments with respect to your question before diving in. The first is that achieving net zero carbon emissions across the global economy by the middle of the century is both a monumental challenge, but it's an extraordinary opportunity. As many know, the IEA, the International Energy Agency, estimates that the investment required is approximately $3 to $4 trillion per annum, $3 to $4 trillion per year during the next 2 decades to achieve a pathway to net zero. And that is a massive scale of new investment. And it will shape markets and industries for a generation. But I highlight it because what's key is that it requires a close partnership between governments and the private sector. And it will leverage the leadership of the United States and China. That is to say, there is not enough money from a government or from the private sector alone. It will require close collaboration. The second is that the forces of innovation from climate technology will transform every industry. At its core, the climate challenge is an energy challenge. And the energy sector that powers all of our lives will have to transform, whether that be transportation, whether that be the building, whether that be heavy industries, but so too agriculture, lighter industry. But the point is that clean energy has evolved from something that was its own vertical 10 or 20 years ago to now being infused throughout every industry throughout the economy. And so with that context, one way to think about what has to happen for all this to come together, and one framework to understand and assess green investment strategies, is a three-legged stool. And that three-legged stool is comprised of policy, innovative technology, and markets, both the demand for product, but also the capital markets. And for that three-legged stool to be successful, it requires unprecedented policies and thoughtful collaboration between the public and the private. So just to elaborate, the first leg of that stool is the policy. And the most important part of this is that the government policy is to provide predictable, long-term, transparent, and consistent direction that gives innovators and capital providers confidence to take risk. The more clarity with which they understand the policy and the more confidence they have in the policy, the more confidence they will have in taking risk whether that be on research and development or that be with respect to the capital markets. The second is on innovative technology. And again, I think it's worth reminding that the IEA tells us that almost 75%, 3/4 of the cumulative emission reductions needed for our net zero pathway rely on technologies that are either not yet commercialized at scale or are still in prototype or demonstration phase. And lastly, the third leg of the stool is the markets, and in particular the capital markets. Again, given $3 to $4 trillion per annum of investment capital needed to decarbonize our economy, it's going to require very close coordination between the governments and the private sector. And the way to think about that is that the marketplace is evolving from not only measuring risk and return, but it's now evolving to measure risk, return, and impact. And increasingly, how impact is measured is critical to how capital will judge both business risk and environmental risk. And the stakeholders here are not just investors, but their employees and their consumers. And collectively, these stakeholders are seeking demonstrable change from what are currently unsustainable economic practices. So just a few examples to put this three-legged stool into action with respect to green solutions. In 2021, and this year, the global capital spending on renewable energy is expected to surpass the capital expenditures on fossil fuels for the first time ever. Supporting that trend, you've seen, as you described, where President Biden unveiled today a $2.3 trillion infrastructure plan that underscores America's commitment to build a modern, climate-resistant infrastructure needed for a clean energy future. But I would also quickly note, it's not lost on anyone following climate infrastructure that China built 120 gigawatts of wind and solar capacity in all of last year. And if you were to go back 10 years, China's commitment to solar PV panels through their own policy and through their own capital helped drive what is now a very competitive price for solar PV around the world. Separately, there's a growing international consensus that clean energy, or clean hydrogen rather, will play a critical role in this transition to a sustainable energy future. The application of hydrogen to heavy industry, heavy transportation, and long-term storage are important dimensions that require much more R&D. And as many people know, the economics of clean hydrogen today are just not there yet with any scale. Direct air capture technologies are also continuing to evolve. And I think interestingly here, companies like Microsoft, Amazon, Stripe, Shopify in North America are helping to build the market for carbon capture, utilization, and sequestration, either by buying offsets that these companies are establishing or directly investing in direct air capture companies. On the mobility side, General Motors and Volkswagen, and your comparable in China, have announced they will only manufacture electric vehicles by 2035 and 2030 respectively. This is a perfect example of setting a very clear goal, and the alignment behind it comes in with capital and comes in with clean energy solutions. Agriculture, one of the finalists last year for the Paulson Prize, worked with AI and worked with IoT and digitization to improve efficiency and lower emissions with respect to farming. We'll see more of that with agriculture. We'll see more with respect to decarbonizing basic materials. LafargeHolcim is advancing plans to decarbonize steel and manufacturing. And then finally, I would just say on the capital side that defining and measuring this concept of impact is at the center of the financial and carbon disclosure discussions that are occurring in the lead up to Glasgow and COP26 in November. It's a key part of understanding and assessing how companies themselves are aligning with net zero emissions, but also how they will ultimately impact how capital is allocated and who will be determined is a winner or a loser in that regard. So I would just say that the shared challenge and opportunity to lead and inspire towards the building of net zero, towards a decarbonized world by 2050 is really an extraordinary opportunity. And I would say that there are three remarkable accomplishments that we can imagine. One is a more balanced planet where humankind can not only grow, but it can thrive. The second is a transformation of our global economy equal or greater in magnitude to that which we saw with the Industrial Revolution. And the third is a world that allows for a more equal, more just and inclusive society. And to your earlier point on the Biden announcement this afternoon, that's a very important part of the climate infrastructure and the resilience built into that plan. I'll pause there.
Thank you, Tracy, very much for a very comprehensive analysis on this very big picture and a very thoughtful discussion on that. Thank you very much. 我们下面呢，第二个问题呢，有请
The next question is for Rose. We know that China is one of the most biologically diverse countries in the world, and the COP15 will be held in Kunming this year, and that shows China's role and contribution to biodiversity. You are an expert in biodiversity, so I'm going to ask you a question about biodiversity. So it requires effective protection of the ecosystem, and that requires a market-oriented and diversified ecological compensation, and that requires mechanisms and establishment of mechanism for realizing the value. But at the moment, more than 90% of the ecological compensation funds come from the fiscal expenditure at various levels of government. And this will put some pressure on government finances. How can the private sector and private investors participate? What will be the incentives and what will be the models to enable the private sector to participate in protecting biodiversity? So we also need to have a mechanism for evaluating risks and benefits, and that will be able to build consensus and mobilize people to contribute to this process. So can you talk about this? Thank you very much. I'm very honored to have this opportunity to discuss all of you with the topics directly linked to the Paulson Prize. So before answering your question, let me give you some numbers as backgrounders. The Paulson Institute did some research on investments in green industry and in biodiversity protection. Let me share with you those numbers. On a global scale, in 2019, investment in protecting the ecosystem is about $120 to $130 billion. It's about 0.12 to 0.14% of world GDP. And we also analyze the demand in order to protect the ecosystem. Every year, we need about $700 billion of investment. So it looks like it's about 1/5 of the demand that we're investing in this area. So it's a very low number. And also in 2011 to 2019, we also did an analysis on China's investment. In 2019, the investment was about 370 billion RMB. So the GDP was 99 trillion. So it's about 0.38%. Compared with the world average, China has a larger share of investment in protecting the environment and ecosystem. So in order to protect the biodiversity and ecosystem, the investment was only 19.3%. And an important measure is to establish nature reserves. And the investment in that is only 7.7 billion RMB, so about 2.04% of the total investment. So we invested a lot. However, how the money is used is probably not very rationalized. So how can we mobilize more businesses and private investors to participate in protecting the biodiversity? We think there's a lot of potential, but the precondition is that the government must play a positive role. We believe government can play two roles. One is to create a good policy environment to incentivize businesses and citizens to participate in protecting the ecosystem and biodiversity. Without that mechanism, there's not enough motivation for the private sector and private investors to participate. And second, government needs to build a strong and robust legal system to protect the market players and to reduce their impact or adverse impact on the environment, so that we can require less money for repairing the ecosystem.
So in order to meet the founding gap in ecological protection, we can work in three areas. First, we should increase investment through various channels. I can give you two international examples. And second, we need to reduce the damage to ecology. And third, we can improve the financial efficiency of the private and public sector so as to maximize the effects of ecological founding. So in each area, I'd like to give you 1 to 2 international examples. As case studies, first, we can increase financial investment. In this regard, there is one example in the United States. US national parks have a history of more than 100 years. And national parks are very important means for the US to protect ecology. Apart from government, especially the federal government investment, which amounts to about $3 billion every year, covered by the federal budget, it also has an excellent mechanism. There is a circle of friends, the friends of national parks, to mobilize the public and charity foundations to donate to national parks. So decades ago, they established a foundation for national parks. And every year they can receive about 300 to 400 million US dollars to supplement government funding. So I think this provides very good experience for China because China is establishing its national park system. So I hope we can also establish a circle of friends for Chinese national parks so Chinese entrepreneurs, business leaders can chip in. And also green finance tools such as green bonds can play a very important role. China is playing a leading role in green finance. But according to our analysis, China's green financial commitments, about 80 to 90% go to energy conservation as well as the response to climate change, rather than protection of ecology and biodiversity. So we believe there is great space to increase green financial products, be it financial loans or financial bonds, financial insurance. All these can be fully leveraged. And second, how can we reduce the damage to ecology? Let me give you an example. Through laws and regulations, we can force market players to refrain from damage to ecology. And there is a biodiversity offset mechanism. And this is a novelty for China. Under this mechanism, I can give you an example in the United States. There is a wetland environmental bank mechanism in the United States. In the US water protection law, there is one provision stating that there is on zero net damage for wetland in the United States. And this objective is broken down into the states and counties, so local governments are responsible for providing the legal framework. So local construction and economic development, if they cause damage to wetland, they have to compensate. With such legal provisions, then if the developers damage the wetland, they have to provide the funds to restore the wetland, or they can buy some wetland credit from the market to neutralize their environmental footprint. So this is also a very successful example. I think China can learn from that. And also carbon market. In June, China will launch its national carbon trading market. So our suggestion is that with the maturing of carbon trading in China, forests, wetlands, grasslands, the green or blue carbons from these sources can be included in the national carbon market. So businesses with quotas for carbon emissions can buy carbon sink from the forests as well as the wetlands so that they can raise some funds for ecological protection. And third, how can we improve the efficiency of the use of the funds? Let me give you an example. Lots of government funding and private funding, when applied to ecological restoration, are applied through engineering means rather than the ecological services provided by nature. So the cost effectiveness is not great. Let me give an example of New York City. It's a huge city with tens of millions of population. So how does it provide quality on drinking water for the citizens? This is a common challenge facing cities across the world. 20 or 30 years ago, its municipal government made a visionary decision. It wanted to invest $4.5 billion in building sewage treatment plants and water plants. But some visionary government officials and scientists saw that there might be another more effective option. So in the north or west of New York, there is a watershed called Cascade, covering about 28,000 hectares. So the New York City bought the watershed and also invested in upgrading local sewage treatment facilities. And they also restricted local grazing activities to reduce the pollution of man-made activities. So in the space of 20 years, the city only spent $1.5 billion, but they provided very quality and cost-effective drinking water for the citizens. So this is a very classic example of water protection and conservation. And I think China can also learn from such example how we can make good use of the ecosystem functions provided by nature. Last but not least, domestic opportunities. I think with the advances of the ecological civilization and the implementation of the philosophy that green is the new gold, the central government has introduced lots of good examples. For example, the establishing of diversified conservation mechanisms and the ecological compensation mechanisms are also soliciting public opinions and comments. And currently, the Chinese government is also trying to establish a compensation platform. The decision will come out very soon. So the business environment and policy environment is very good. So moving forward, we need to determine the property of natural resources. How can they get registered? And how can we assess and quantify the natural assets? The incentives, the methods, the technologies need to be further improved. Although government funding doesn't have that much potential, the private sector, be it the donations or business participation, can have very bright prospects. Thank you. Thank you very much, Rose. She shared with lots of figures, including our investment in ecological conservation. Investment is not enough, and the structure still needs to be improved. But moving forward, we have great space. We can learn from international experiences. So China's investment, as well as the mechanism for ecological compensation, market participation, and the use of the natural functions can help us do a better job moving forward. The next speaker is Professor Qi. Regarding China's 3060 objectives, the world is watching, and China is also taking active actions. In this process, we see there are lots of specific issues. For example, for carbon peaking. What is the peaking level? How can we achieve that? How can it be broken down to different sectors and businesses? Rose also mentioned carbon market, which is under preparation, and Shanghai and Wuhan will be playing very important roles in this regard. But how do we define the aggregate? Can electricity cover all the areas? And there is also price control in China's electricity. So questions abound. Professor Qi, could you share with us more on China's 3060 objectives? Thank you very much, Madame Yang. I think the 3060 objectives, I think for the carbon peaking objective, it was finalized at the Paris Accord. At that time, it was said that around 2030, China's carbon would peak. And there is another statement which often gets overlooked. In December last year, President Xi Jinping actually revised the NDC commitment. China said that by 2030, the non-fossil fuels percentage in primary on energy consumption was around 20%, but now it has been raised to 25%. According to this direction, in 2030, the carbon will peak in China and non-fossil fuels will rise to 25% in primary energy consumption. On this trend, we can be very helpful about meeting the 2060 target. If non-fossil fuels can reach 25%, in 2030, if our energy consumption is no more than 5.5 billion tons, last year it was 4.97 billion tons. Then in around 2055 or 2025, we can peak the carbon beforehand. We know with the EU, it plans to peak in 2050. And the US will peak in 2050, according to its announcement. Then according to such plans, sorry, it's not carbon peak. It should be carbon neutrality for both the EU and the US. So from peaking to neutrality, it will take the US 45 years, and it will take the UK 80 years, whereas for China, it's only 30 years. So within a very short space of time, the pressure for transition is huge. And Tracy also mentioned from technology, from finance, there are huge challenges.
So for China, carbon neutrality has another challenge, which is a social transformation and the high risks involved. And we also need to think about the social impact. It might lead to other risks. This is something that we need to evaluate. You talked about the national carbon market. It's going to be launched by the 30th of June. And we set the hard deadline at June 30th. This national carbon market only involves one industry, the power industry, but its carbon emission accounts for 40% of the total CO2 emission in China. It's about 4 billion tons. So if we can control that, cap that, that would be a great success. But it's also a very big challenge. So in the context of carbon peaking and carbon neutrality, we expect the national carbon market to play a very positive role in building capacity in the industry. You said in Shanghai and in Wuhan since 2011, pilot programs have been conducted there. However, in terms of the resources invested in the carbon market, there's still a huge gap. And we also need to study better ways to allocate the allowances. Right now, the carbon price is very low. In the pilot programs, our carbon price is about 1/7 that of the EU. So we hope that great benefits will be generated by launching the carbon market. But the pricing of carbon is a very important component of carbon trading, and it is also a foundational path for reaching carbon emission reduction. But that's not the only option. We can also consider carbon tax and other administrative measures to price carbon. So carbon trading is the most cost-effective way of achieving the goal. But we can also study other options. We are under extreme pressure to meet the timeline, and we can't just put all the eggs in this one basket of a carbon market. Even if it's 100% successful, it only covers 40% of carbon emission. So the carbon market, if it's successful, we have seen the past 16 years that it has been tested in Europe, but we can't wait 16 years in China. We need to adopt administrative measures and find other ways, and also by investing in technology, in innovation. And also we can explore carbon tax. We should not give up this option. Now we cannot just put all our eggs in this one basket of the carbon market. So we also need to think about developing regulations and carbon tax to put all our efforts together to enable Chinese businesses and foreign businesses to make contribution to carbon emission reduction. Thank you, Professor Xi, for explaining the carbon peak and carbon neutrality goals and about different options of achieving those goals. And finally, we have Chairman Yicai from the Shenzhen Institute of Building Research. And the Institute also was the winner of the 2014 Paulson Prize. So your institute did a lot to contribute to zero carbon emissions. So we see a lot of opportunities in green buildings and energy efficient buildings. So Madam Ye, can you talk about your experience in the last 6-7 years, and how can more companies join the effort to make more energy efficient buildings. Good morning. I'm very honored to have this opportunity to discuss with some of my old friends to talk about the prospect of energy efficient buildings. No matter how far we are apart, we all share the same idea and we'll all contribute to the effort of carbon emission reduction. Since 2002, I've been leading my institute in doing research in energy conservation and energy efficiency. So we've had some ups and downs in the process. In 2011, we expanded our effort from energy efficient buildings to low carbon cities. So in 2014, our low carbon city project won the Paulson Prize. And that came at the right time, and it was very encouraging of our efforts. At the time, when all the government efforts were on developing the economy and in achieving GDP goals, there were a lot of discussions about whether low carbon development can help with economic development and higher GDP growth. But the opinion was divided. At the time, we participated in the design of the low carbon city project, and we operated the project in the last 10 years. We changed our development model from the goal-oriented to a people-centered approach. So we converted some of the old factory workshops into residential housing, and we converted them into apartments and dormitories. And at the time, the Shenzhen government was very visionary. And in 2014, when we won the Paulson Prize, it was a huge boost of confidence for us. So that is an acknowledgement of our effort in moving in the right direction of low carbon development. And I can still remember at the award ceremony that we were really inspired to continue experimenting on our initiatives. And we have seen further growth of our low carbon city development, and many businesses moved in to the industrial park. From 2011 to 2019, we were able to achieve 17% growth. So from 14 billion to 15 billion GDP achieved in that low carbon project. And also people benefited from the improvement in the environment, in the improvement of water quality, and all the low carbon technologies were adopted in that experimental project. And we were able to improve people's living standards. And in this new era, it is now one of the 10 top demonstration projects for Shenzhen. And with the new development opportunities, we expanded from that one project to other projects. And we became a company, not just a research institute. And then we got listed a few years later. And that is very encouraging, inspiring for us. So we leveraged the capital market to promote green and low carbon development. And we received a lot of support from our shareholders. And we built a 60 to 70,000 square meter of R&D center by using the solar power as a DC powered project. We worked with a national lab in the United States. And it's been running for 9 months, and it's a very successful project. And I believe this will be a very important demonstration project for low carbon development in other cities. And we have expanded our businesses to other provinces. For example, we participated in the construction of some buildings in Xiong'an new area. And in this process, we learned that adhering to the right cause to protect the planet and to reduce the consumption of resources, and by reducing waste and reducing energy consumption, we can better reflect on our way of life, our lifestyle, and to have a more healthy lifestyle, and to have more accessible transportation infrastructure, and to better use energy and for recycling waste, and by improving the quality of water and the air, so that people, whether young or old, can live a better life and a more healthy life, so that we can be more enlightened and to have better lifestyles and to promote economic and social development. So technology serves the people. Technology serves this purpose. If we continue to rely on excessive consumption, it's just putting labels on fossil fuels, on renewable energy. We need to understand that we are in this together. We are all on the same boat. We want to achieve carbon neutrality, carbon peak, and green development. Thank you. That's the future. Thank you for the Paulson Institute for establishing this Paulson Prize, for pushing forward this ecological civilization. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Ye. We had a very fruitful discussion covering all aspects of low carbon development. We talked about government goals, government targets, and market mechanisms, and the importance of technology and international cooperation and equity and inclusiveness. And we also talked about how to build a consensus around the world to achieve our common goals. I think there's a very important factor here, is that we need to price carbon, whether it's through carbon tax or carbon trading. We need to provide a market mechanism around the world to encourage businesses and individuals to act together. And we also talked about our own participation and our changing values and lifestyles. So we need to work towards low carbon and green development. So we need all the global leaders and businesses and everybody working together to achieve these goals. Thank you, Tracy, Rose, Professor Qi, and Madam Ye. And we look forward to this year's Paulson Prize for Sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you for your wonderful insights and observations. 2021 Paulson Prize for Sustainability is officially open for submission from today to June the 30th. Please follow the Paulson Institute website and WeChat account for more information. We look forward to your application. Thanks again to our online audience for this launching ceremony. We would also like to thank China Recycling Economy Association and Center for China and Globalization for their support. We want to thank Yicai for supporting live broadcast for today's ceremony. Thank you all.